was recentered in that identifying my blessings is always something that makes you happy. I was reminded of a book that my mother used to make me read. Not read it to me, used to make me read. Because that was the kind of household in which I grew up. And that's one of the things for which I am grateful. The book is Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are? It's a Dr. Seuss classic. And in the spirit of the recent regrounding, I thought I might read it to you. Let's get started. When I was quite young, and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of Dries. He sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten it yet. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, and you feel sour and blue, when you start to go mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more. Oh, ever so much more. Oh, much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on the Bunglebung Bridge that they're building across Boober Bay and Bum Ridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who are in it are troubled with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful, a whole heaping lot, for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Just suppose, for example, you lived in Gazette and got caught up in traffic on Zate Highway 8. Or suppose, for instance, you lived in Gazere with your bedroom up here and your bathroom up there. Suppose, just suppose, you were poor Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdimbulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the glick or the gore fits into the scrux, or the snux, or the snore. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdimbulator apart. Think they work you too hard. Think of poor Ollie Sard. He has to mow grass in his uncle's backyard. It's a quick-growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it. And all that stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in that hay is the pifflew's pay of 2 douglas a day, and Allie can't live on such pifflew's pay. So, he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays in Grooves. How lucky you are you don't live in his shoes. And poor Mr. Bix, every morning at 6, poor Mr. Bix has his orphan to fix. It doesn't seem fair, it just doesn't seem right. But his boyfriend just seems to go schlump every night. It schlumps in a heap, sadly needing repair. Bix figures it's due to the local night air. It takes him all day to unschlump it, and then the night it comes back, and it schlumps once again. So don't you feel blue, don't get down in the dumps. You're lucky you don't have a orphan that schlumps. And while we're at it, consider the schlots, the crumple-horn, web-footed, green-bearded schlots, whose tail is entailed with unsolvable knots. And if he isn't much more worse off than you, I'll eat my umbrella. That's just what I'll do. And you're lucky indeed you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you must sit on a whamble, held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, if you're old, whamble faddle gets loose. I'm telling you, Ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I-dotter, he has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in an INT factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at. Out west, near Watch Watch, there's a watch watcher, bee watcher. His job is to watch, is to keep both eyes on the lazy town bee. For a bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched and he watched, but in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder. Not much. So then somebody said, our old bee watching man just isn't bee watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another watch watcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched the bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another watch watcher had to come in as a watch watcher. And today all the watchers who live in Hotch Hotch are watching the watch watching watch. Watching the watcher who's watching that bee. You're not a watch watcher. You lucky, you see. And how fortunate you're not, Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the past 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffing Pogglehorn players who have to parade down the Pogglehorn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Pooboken. It's awful how often their poggles get broken. And oh, just suppose your poor Henry Hatto, try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He thinks that perhaps something's wrong with his giz, and I think that, by golly, there probably is. And the brothers Bazoo, the poor brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew, just like theirs happened to do. You think you are unlucky? Well, I'm telling you, Ducky. Some people are muchly, oh ever so muchly more unlucky than you. And suppose you lived in that forest in France, where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from perilous, pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe, you're a fortunate guy, and you ought to be shouting, how lucky am I? And speaking of plants, you should be greatly gladish that you're not Farmer Frankenbird's 17th radish. And you're so lucky you're not Lucky Gown, who lives by himself 90 miles out of town in the ruins of Ronk. Ronk is rather run down. And you're so lucky you're not a left sock, left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all of the things that you're not. Thank goodness you're not something someone's forgot and left all alone in some punkerish place, like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, Ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, oh ever so much, so much more unlucky than you.